Fuse is one of those movies where you see the trailer, you have expectations of what the movie might be about, but then when you go watch it, you are pleasantly surprised that the execution is way different than you thought. This week we're talking about Fuze. Welcome if you're new here. I've been reviewing every movie I see in the theater. I start out with a non-spoiler review of the film, talking about some of its key points that don't give too much away, and then we go into a little bit of spoiler discussion on some of the topics that may be of interest in the film. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe and comment if you've seen this movie or any other movies I've seen. And if there's something you think I should see in the theater, please let me know. Directed by David Mackenzie, best known for Hell or High Water, who brings that same aesthetic along for this heist film, set against the backdrop of London, where Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays Major Will Tranter, and his bomb disposal unit are called out by Gugu Mbatha-Raw's Chief Superintendent Zuzana to a construction site where an unexploded World War II bomb is discovered during an excavation. After the area has been cleared, you see Theo James as Karalis and Sam Worthington as X and their crew of thieves put their plan into motion, liberating the bank vault of its valuable assets. This is a film that has you following a number of different perspectives. You're seeing the military and the police as they try to defuse and evacuate the area around the bomb location, in dealing with some of the tenants of these neighborhoods you don't really want to leave. There's some instances of following some of these tenants and you're not sure how important they are to the plot or not. And then you also see the perspective of the thieves and how they get into the evacuated area or have already been there, and what their plans are breaking into this vault that is in the middle of this evacuation zone. So a lot of the tension is built around, or are they going to get caught? Who's all involved with this? Where's the story really going? There's some things going on between the characters that create a lot of tension. Walking into this movie, I didn't really know what to expect. I had some assumptions of what the movie was going to be about based on the trailer, but I'm glad to see that the trailer does not give away the entire plot, and it does leave a lot to digest as you're watching the film. The pacing here is fantastic. It has this constant tension building up. The movie starts off right away. You're not standing around watching a bunch of people's backgrounds before they get to what's going on in the film. It just starts off. And then there's a lot of music that helps build a lot of the character interactions and builds upon the tension around the scenario where there's a bomb that may explode and there's also a robbery going on down the street. And it makes you a little more invested in the story and how it's going to move along, because you have a number of different characters you're following. You learn a little bit about each of them, kind of, but enough to keep it interesting. It really gives similar vibes to this year's Crime 101, which was released back in January, which was another unconventional heist movie where you're not really sure where the story is going, but it builds a lot of tension and really isn't the type of movie we get a lot of anymore. The characters aren't super deep in this film. You know, you see some of the characters from the evacuated zone, some of these citizens. The camera does follow one of two of them pretty closely, and you're wondering if they're part of the story or not, or how are they going to come into play later on the film. There's also this animosity between Theo James and Sam Worthington's characters, and you don't really understand what's going on there. A lot of this becomes more clear as the movie develops, and then there's the bomb disposal team that I really like, with Aaron Taylor Johnson being kind of the commander of the team. You see the different sergeants he works with, one of them who's kind of a go-getter and maybe somewhat of a goody two-shoes, I suppose, because there's some shots that are poured. It's a tradition that Major Will Tranter does with any of these events where, hey, if this stuff doesn't blow up and we don't die, we're going to take a shot. And this particular sergeant seems a little weary of it. There's also this tension around Major Tranter and like, what is his history? He does seem like he has something going on. If he feels a little tense in the scenarios around disposing of the bomb and kind of understanding what it is. And then there's a lot about how the police are functioning in this scenario. You see the chief at the command center at the police headquarters, following all the different units, relaying information to the bomb disposal unit. And so it's very engaging kind of moving from one character to another. It kept you wondering what was really going on and how these pieces connect together. There are a few scenes throughout where you think you know what's going on, but then that idea turns upside down, is completely different, or is this slightly off of what you were thinking. So there's a lot of great pacing in here. The movie starts right off jumping into multiple different perspectives, following, the bomb disposal unit, the police, some of the evacuation area, and the thieves. And there's a couple really good set pieces in here around the police procedurals, particularly in how they come across that there is something going on inside of the evacuation zone, due to how they're using their drone technology and how they're using patrol officers. And so I found that part really interesting. And it was something that you notice earlier in the film before the stuff with the drone happens, makes you question what is going on and why the thieves are doing something in a particular way. And then there's a lot of stuff around the bomb disposal and how the different devices they use to either slow down the bomb. It's just really interesting how they build dirt walls around the particular area of the bomb to kind of keep it at bay or lessen its impact if it does decide to explode. And then the heist itself is interesting, that there's this tension between the two characters that Theo James and Sam Worthington are playing. There's something going on there, but you don't know exactly what it is. There's a lot of interesting things, how they set up the lookouts, how they're basically doing this procedure to get into the bank vault. And then there's also how are they going to escape and get away from this area as they're surrounded by cops. It's definitely not the experience I was expecting, but was pleasantly surprised. Some people may see this movie and think it has way too much going on for its 90-minute runtime, but I really enjoyed this movie. I thought the tension was great. I thought the overall story and the plot was something fresh and new, at least in recent years, with a lot of the formulaic stuff that has been coming out. If you're a fan of any kind of heist movie or even somewhat spy films, stuff like Crime 101 or Black Bag, then this is a movie you will definitely probably enjoy. Even though I do score movies on a 5-star scale, it's more that people just love scores and they want something to have a number or some kind of rating to. Not that when it comes to commentary or critiquing something, it's all in the perception and aligning yourself with people who have similar tastes as you to really know if you're going to like something. So I give Fuze 4 stars. Okay, now on to spoilers. There's going to be kind of 3 areas I cover in the spoilers. I don't want to really do a play-by-play of what happened in the movie, but the biggest thing to know is that there is a twist in the film. You basically find out that Aaron Taylor Johnson is in on the heist with Theo James and one of the evacuated families, a particular character named Rahim. You find out that he was an interpreter for Tranter when he was deployed in Afghanistan 10 years in the past. And at this time, this is also where Karalis was working for some kind of diamond smuggler or diamond operation. And their paths cross where Theo James' character gets kidnapped by somebody in Afghanistan. Maybe it's one of the cartels around there or something, but this is where some of the special effects is a little questionable, because you see this pan up of these cars driving away as he's being taken away from this diamond mine. Those vehicles end up running into some IEDs, which at the same time, Aaron Taylor Johnson and the character Rahim are walking down this hill, and he steps on a trigger mine. And so they kind of collide and meet each other in this scenario. And Aaron Taylor Johnson saves Theo James from all these people, but he also saves Aaron Taylor Johnson by helping to disarm this bomb IED that's on the road. And so that's kind of the backstory that the movie ends on. You don't actually know any of this until like the last 5 to 10 minutes. I think you can kind of tell it's coming. There's a few parts in the film that I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure Aaron Taylor Johnson's part of this, because how I interpreted the trailer was that there's going to become kind of chase in the movie, where the trailer really shows it that, okay, maybe Aaron Taylor Johnson and the police join forces to chase these thieves after they discover that the heist is going on. That is far from the case in regards to how this movie plays out. There's a part in the bomb disposal section where Tranter is trying to dispose of the bomb, and you do realize at the end of the movie that he's the one who built it. But one of his sergeants noticed that when it was being excavated, that the digger scraped part of the outside of the bomb, and he noticed that the rusting wasn't consistent with how old the bomb should be. And Tranter tries to play this off, but it is bugging the sergeant. And so when the thieves do get noticed, this is when Tranter detonates the bomb, but he makes sure that everybody's out of the way so no one gets harmed from it. Because you do find out that, some of the reasoning he's doing this is some stuff happened in Afghanistan. A lot of this is thrown through some newspaper clippings they find at his house. He ends up donating all the money that they do sell to a Fuze organization that helps disarm. But throughout some of these scenes, one of his sergeants sees that the digger scratched part of it, the underneath of the casing, and notices it doesn't rust or doesn't look like it's from World War II. But once the thieves get found out that they're actually doing a heist and they're in the process of escaping or trying to get away from the cops, this is when Tranter detonates the bomb. He's making sure that all the people around him are not in the explosion zone. And the explosion that goes off is definitely not one the size that this particular size of armament would do. I believe it'd be a lot bigger if it was this particular size of bomb. So the reason he did trigger this bomb was because when they're doing this heist, they have a generator inside a dumpster. And this generator is putting off heat, and the police units have a drone flying around, checking for heat signatures, making sure that people are out of the area in case of an accidental explosion. They send in a patrol to find out what is going on, and this is when Theo James' character's making sure to turn the generator off because they hear the cops are around there. This is where some of the questionable stuff in the movie happens, even though I do think it's a really good movie. There are stuff you can nitpick about some of the scenes because he's walking down this alley and the cops see him and he just, starts running. And then they escape. The thieves basically break out into two different groups. One of them immediately goes into the sewers to escape that way. And then Theo James and one of the other guys are taking these two packages because you realize they're not taking any of the gold. They're keeping it very light of what they're stealing. So a lot of jewels, a lot of money. But there's also this envelope that Theo James took out of one of the deposit boxes. Him and this other guy go to a rooftop where they have two giant drones. One of the drones isn't working, so Theo James offers to take over that one. And the other guy walks around the corner, sends the drone off. They have somebody who's going to catch the boxes outside the evacuation zone. And at this time, you can kind of see Theo James doing something in the background to the side of the building. And you assume there's some kind of switch going on there. You find out later that it was diamonds. He was switching out with fake ones. So that way, this crew that he hired, basically Sam Worthington, the other guys are all hired thugs that recruited to help him with this mission. They end up escaping the area, being chased by some armed police officers, but they end up at a farmhouse. And this is where Theo James double crosses them with his cousin, who has a couple thugs with him. They actually end up locking the rest of the crew inside of a garage with the van for some reason, and they're just tied up, but they can get around in the room. So it doesn't seem that's some of the stuff you can kind of critique and why the bad guys did that, because they're kind of idiots in that respect. But then Theo James' cousin wants more money and ends up smashing one of the diamonds and notices it's fake, and then they take Theo James hostage. And there's like a little bit of a car chase. And this is where, for some reason, they didn't take his phone away. So he's in the back of this trunk and he texts somebody in trouble. You assume it might be Aaron Taylor Johnson, which is correct. And he shows up and basically snipes everybody. And then they run off. But there's some interesting things on that aspect that just didn't make some sense. And that could be where somebody critiques this movie if you really want to dive into it. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It was a lot of fun. It had a lot of good tension, a lot of great acting. So I highly recommend watching it in the theater. And since it is probably a smaller film that won't be around that much longer in its theatrical run, definitely catch it when it goes on streaming. And I'll be back this weekend with some more reviews, but remember to hit that like and subscribe, leave a comment below. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time.